I think these boys now, with the base they've got and what they've done over the last 7 or 8 years, they've reignited the Italian supporters, and Italian supporters ignited with the Italian national anthem, mate. They're bloody tough to stop.
Hello everyone, ciao a tutti and welcome to episode 11 of the Fratelli Rugby podcast. I'm joined as always, no Ottavio today. He is missing in action, but Mike is here with me. Mike, how are you, mate? It's been a while. It's been about 3 weeks since we last spoke.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time. You had a nice little recharging break as well in between, right?
Yes. Yeah, nice little camping break.
Nice.
Very therapeutic.
Yeah, got away, nature, all that jazz.
Absolutely, yeah, I did.
Nice.
And
good to be back.
Good, thank you very much. And as ever, we have managed to swing ourselves a new guest, and a very special guest today. For anyone that's followed Italian rugby for a long time, in the last 20 years, will know exactly who we've got today, and it is Paul Griffen, the ex-Italian scrum half. Paul, how are you, mate? Thank you very much for joining us.
Mate, I'm very good, actually. I'm very pleased to be on here. I'm sweltering here in Italy. It is absolutely sizzling hot, but no, mate, I'm keen for a chat. And big shout out to all the Italian people out there watching this. Let's go.
Absolutely, yeah. And just for people that maybe are unaware, the heat in Italy at the moment is kind of not a million miles away from about 40 degrees at the moment, and upwards of that. So it is very, very hot. I'm looking out of my window, and it's pretty much rained for the last week. So I'd love to say I'd love that heat, but I think even for me, sort of plus of 40 is that's a stretch for me.
Normally my hair's standing up. It's just gone flat now with the amount of sweat that's coming out at the moment.
I was going to say, you haven't been tempted to kind of go buzz cut and shave all that off and just think?
Oh, I am, but it's actually for a cause. There's I do a lot of stupid things, as you can imagine, with the sideburns, with the dreadlocks, socks down, all that kind of stuff, a bit of against the grain. So now I've actually jumped on board with a foundation over here in Italy, and you grow your hair and you can donate it to young kids who are fighting cancer and stuff. So I've got 3 centimeters to go. It's getting there, but it is bloody hot.
Well, that's a brilliant cause, by the way. Congrats for that anyway. And I'm sure we will be able to help out as well. And I think a nice place for me to start, I think, given that we've discussed the hair and the famous chops, as we called it over here, and as you were known sort of internationally, maybe not the same in the Italian camp, but that sort of style you have, Paul, I think that's kind of something that I think is internationally known as the socks down, the hair. Was there any effort put towards that, or was that just simply a thing that it just happened?
Oh, the socks down was always something. I always started to get cramp about the 60th minute, and a mate of mine said, look, you get to 60 minutes, pull your socks down and you won't get cramp. So I never got cramp again. So I thought, oh, bugger it. After the national anthem, I pulled them down straight away. So that possibility just gets eliminated straight away. So that was the reason behind the socks. Plus, my mum was a bit pissed off at me as well, because you've got to have your socks up. It's disrespectful to have your socks down. So I said, Mum, I'm not disrespecting anybody. I'm just doing it for my massive calves that you produced me with, that you gave me. So, and then, the look, mate, the look was, like I said before, was just bets, really. Back in Canterbury, when I was back in the day, a mate of mine called Clark McLeod, he challenged me to grow a hair for a year. He lasted about 3 days, and I just carried on. So, and then the dreads came, and it just kind of became part of it. And then another bet when I was in Italy, the second year I was here, there's a Canadian lock, and he said to me, oh, let's grow facial hair for a year. I was like, all right, but I can't, mate. I've got gaps here. I've got gaps there, and I can't grow it. I look like an absolute idiot. So I decided that I would chop off the beast around here because I've got a lovely jawline, and just let the chops go. And they just took off and took off and took off, and it just became part of it, I suppose. It was, I don't know. I always say to people, I've got a fat face, so it makes me look skinnier.
Funny, like me and my friends you're a bit of a cult hero, by the way, down south of South England with me and my friendship group. But the chops from God is what we used to call you. It's just it just stuck, mate. It just stuck. But yeah, you're massive cult hero down here when you're playing in the Six Nations. I think everyone was looking forward to seeing what wacky style you might have pulled out the following year. So Love
The,
it.
the weird questions from people actually to colour them every now and again, but I couldn't do that. They're actually going grey now, but I could have coloured them. Someone wanted me to go blue, but I couldn't do it, mate. I didn't want to look like a Smurf.
Right, but getting the Wolverine look up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Just a yellow suit next to it.
I was the first Wolverine, mate.
Yeah, that's it.
And Paul, I think it'd be nice to sort of, I mean, you've told us a little bit off air about what you're sort of doing at the moment and what life kind of holds for you right now. Do you want to just kind of explain to us a little bit about what you've done since kind of coming out of the playing career and what you're kind of doing and how it's been over the last few years?
Yeah, no, mate, I retired in 2015. I was 39 by that stage, so it was time to hang up the boots. Obviously, the mind was still there to play and run around, but I just wanted to be whole for my kids as well. Obviously, a big part of that too. My oldest boy's autistic, so a big part was dedicating a lot of time to him as well, because there is good times and there's bad times during autism as well. So we had to understand that and try to approach that the best way possible. So I stepped down from playing and I jumped into the Italian Rugby Union. So I was involved in there for 7 years through the academy system and forming the next batch of young scrum halves. And I love that. And then till 2 years ago, where I came out of the federation and I got involved in coaching an actual team. So I coached the 3rd division team last year, and we won our championship. It was really good, with a bunch of young guys who are just working all the time. Not professional players, but they stuck it in and they've done everything they could to try and get over the line, and we managed to get across there. And then I've just signed a contract with Petrarca, which is one of the top teams in the Italian league. I start in 10 days' time, so I'm looking bloody forward to that. Just to get involved again with people actually who work playing for rugby. Play rugby as a job. So that's quite cool. But then behind the scenes, I've got a lot of stuff with autism. Obviously, I get involved a hell of a lot. I created 3 years ago lines of woolen hats with the puzzle on them. I don't know if I've got one around here. I'll find one somewhere soon. Or there's these bucket hats just here with the puzzles.
I've seen these bucket hats. I've often thought that I'd quite like to have one of those. I think
Personalised, mate, with a Griffin 9 logo.
And
so just and that's and with the society that I follow over here, there's 15% of every purchase goes to the society. So they've got a decent chunk of funding which helps them with the teachers, the educators, obviously with families as well. There's a lot of stuff going on trying to help families out with a lot of different things going on. But mate, when you can give back, I love trying to do as much as I can. And like I said, having the look and being recognisable, then people kind of jump on board, which is a nice way of being able to do it, But apart from that, mate, that's about it really. And I've just finished now, actually, the last little project I've started 2 years ago. I actually planned it up pre-COVID, where I wanted to, once I came to the Italian Rugby Union, I wanted to dedicate time to the young and up-and-coming scrum halves. So last year I created the first ever role-specific camp in Italy. So I had last year, I think it was 26 scrum halves come to a 1 week camp up in the mountains, up by France, up by Mont Blanc. And it was a great time. We just finished the second edition. This year we had 2 weeks, 37 kids over 2 weeks, 4 girls and 33 boys. So it was actually quite nice. And mate, it's just nice to be able to work with these kids. We done rugby in the morning. It was quite full on. Some days were intense, some days weren't, depending on the theme for the day. And in the afternoons, we dedicate everything, obviously because it's so hot, to water sports. So we went whitewater rafting, we went canoeing, we went up to lakes, we went swimming in dams, played beach volleyball, which was absolutely horrible, but I'm not bad for beach volleyball, and I can't jump anymore. My knees are buggered.
I want to sign up. I want to sign up.
I was going to say, sounds great.
Oh, mate, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And I was lucky enough, I had a media manager that came on board. I got a girl on board and she was absolutely fantastic. So the amount of publicity she put out for me for the years to come was absolutely outstanding. So, but that's my life, mate, basically in a nutshell over the last 8 years.
And that's a big nutshell there, by the way. That's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I like being busy. My wife hates me being so busy, but I like being busy. So, if I'm busy, I'm not here annoying her, and then I can't annoy her in my eyes.
Good on you. And with regards to all of this stuff that you're doing outside, the hats and stuff, is there a website? Is there anywhere where we can maybe direct some traffic towards for you?
I actually talked to a girl that I knew, that I know last week. She came up and caught up with me in Val d'Aosta, where I was doing these camps. And next week we're catching up, and she's going to build a website for me. So actually, I've just been doing it over social media myself through Facebook and Instagram, and just word of mouth really, which is sometimes is enough, but the way that it's taking off, I think the woolen hats is about 12,000 of them gone now, and the bucket hat only been out for about a year. There's about 3,500 of them gone. So it's taking off, and it's nice. It's quite satisfying personally when you go somewhere and you see random people just with their hats on. So
love that, and we'll link those obviously for you in the description for those who are listening and interested in helping out a good cause. I think it's important that we use this platform to help these great courses that these guys are setting up. So good on you.
Thank you, bro. That's awesome.
I think, Paul, I mean, you mentioned it, the camps you've been running for trying to find maybe the next. Is it a case of trying to? You've obviously done some work with the federation in terms of trying to develop the scrum halves. How did you find that? I mean, obviously, from when you were a scrum half to what the scrum half is now, is there a big difference in the sort of, I don't know, the sort of way that you're coached? What sort of differences has there been since you've kind of come through in those coaching terms?
I think the basic fundamentals always remain the same. When you've got your, you talk about your passing technique and your, body weight distribution, all that kind of stuff, kicking. Not a lot of that has changed, but it's been sped up so much more because the game has just got so much faster as well. I think at breakdowns too, there's so much more of a war now between the jackler and the cleaners, so it becomes a lot more difficult to get out of there and throw a decent ball. So a lot of the stuff we do is just making sure you get your foot placement right, getting out of the, excuse my language, but getting out of the shit as quick as you can so you can throw something decent and precise to your teammate. But in general, I don't think a lot of it's changed. A lot of, in this country especially, there's not a lot of skill work done building up into as through age group rugby. Like there's no rugby in schools. There's basically no sport in schools unless you go to private school. So a lot of those fundamental things that you pick up, on the playground or on the, during your lunch break at school, you've actually got to teach them here. So it takes a lot longer to acquire, I suppose you could say, those basic skills where you can develop on them and push through. So a lot of the stuff we've done during the week, especially the younger kids, I had 5-12-year-old boys, and they just really wanted to work on their passing and their catching, which I thought was outstanding because it's the bread and butter of our game.
And what's that sort of standard like in Italy in terms of, obviously, if it's not kind of done in schools and whatnot, what's the want and maybe the standard of those boys that come to you? Are we sort of talking sort of really beginner level, or is there maybe actually quite a high standard in sort of local rugby in Italy?
Well, a lot of the kids that come to the camps and that's all the kids that I meet up with, their parents or their some of their family members, granddads and stuff have played rugby as well. So they have a good knowledge of it and they understand how things could be done, so we just have to try and refine it and make sure that it becomes as efficient as possible. But the want and the will to learn is massive. And a lot of Italians are really, really coachable because you've probably seen as well in the Six Nations, the years where things weren't great, even the years where things were going really well, and even now where things have picked up a hell of a lot. An Italian will always put his body in line defensively. He'll put his body out there in the right way and the wrong way. They'll put themselves in a situation which can stop an opposition playing from making the advantage line. Whereas we get to a situation where maybe a 3-on-2 or 2-on-3, those simple things, and rather than giving it, we'll hold on to it and go through, and try and run through a wall. So I think the big barrier now is just to try and break that down. And if we can get into schools, which it's impossible basically, but if we can get into schools or get a lot more kids along to rugby as well, then I think that barrier can be broken down. In the last 6 or 7 years, they've had a really good academy system. Unfortunately, it's been scrapped by the new president. But they've had a really good academy system over the last 7 or 8 years, and I think we've seen the progress of the Italian under 20s as well. They've come through really well, and now that the Italian national team's got a lot of those guys that have gone through that process, through that system, and they're actually playing some really attractive rugby. They're not getting the results which maybe they possibly deserve, because maybe that gap has been a little bit big still at the moment. But the gap, I think, in the last Six Nations, especially in the November test as well, with the win over Australia and Samoa, I think were amazing. And even the loss to South Africa in Geneva, I can't remember what the score was. I think it was like 50 points to 25, something like that. But I've never, from when I finished playing, I've never seen an Italian crowd stand up and give them a standing ovation at the end of a November series. It was unreal. It was just, I think these boys now, with the base they've got and what they've done over the last 7 or 8 years, they've reignited the Italian supporters, and Italian supporters ignited with the Italian national anthem, mate. They're bloody tough to stop.
You know what? First of all, 100% agree. Some goosebumps there, sending some memories back as well. But you've brought up a couple of really important points. The first, obviously, was the rugby in schools, and this is something that I'm sure we can all talk of until the cows come home. And hopefully there's some progress made. But it's good to see players like yourself basically taking it, taking the ball by the horn and actually setting up these camps, because if there's some sort of an alignment to a school, or if there's some way that, like you said, you can through word of mouth start populating these camps, then that's only going to be beneficial for us long term. But to make it sort of truly sustainable, we need to start gaining rugby in state schools in Italy. And it's something for me, as someone who was born in UK and grew up here, always had access to rugby in state schools, and I find it quite strange. And I think that's something maybe some of the UK listeners probably weren't aware of, that, like you said, sport in general, and in terms of like skill sets that are typically learned at club level outside of school. And that's probably like a massive area of opportunity for us as a nation in all sports to improve. Has there been any conversations? Have you seen any conversations, like in your time in the federation? Is that something that they've looked at all? Do you know?
Oh, there's been chats. There's been chats about it, but I think the Italian educational system as well, it's so fixed in its way. It's like you don't need to. An old dog doesn't need new bones. So basically, they won't change. School here still goes as well. Monday, so 6 days of school. At least you go to private school. So basically you got 1 day for sport. So everything is piled into your schoolwork. How you go, you can get held back a year as well. I'm not sure what it's like in England, but in New Zealand it's not like that. In New Zealand, you go through school and you go through everything. If you get to the end of it and you haven't done your best, then it's up to you to look after yourself. Where in Italy, you go through all these tests and things can, if you don't get through your second year of high school, then you get held back and you've got to do it again with the kids younger than you. So I think sport is seen as an obstacle to your potential of becoming, a professional in a lifetime job, really. So yeah, there is chat about it, but it's like two bulls butting heads, mate. I don't think it's even going to come to an agreement, unfortunately.
You know what's really weird with that as well, because some of the sports that Italians typically excel at are transferable in a sense, right? So like basketball, for example, we've seen some fantastic basketball players who've made the transition. I think one that really stands out to me recently is Theo McFarland of Samoa, who unfortunately got injured at the end of the Italy game, but like he's been one of the best players in the Premiership this year. And there's definitely transition there, but it just makes you think like what could be if basically someone just gives their head a wobble and and actually makes the concerted effort to improve the sport in general.
100% agree, mate. I think the thing you have in Italy with rugby as well is that it's not considered in one of the top 10 sports in the country. But ahead of it, you've got fencing, you'll have soccer, you'll have volleyball. There's other sports which don't come to mind, but there's rugby I think is ranked, I don't want to be wrong here, but I think it's ranked about 13 or 14 in importance in Italy. So with that too, a lot of times you don't get the choice of the best athlete. Everyone goes to those top sports, and then whoever doesn't make it comes to rugby at a later time. So, but with like I was saying before, with what the under-20s have done the last 7 or 8 years, with the academy system which was there, it gave these guys a bit of a platform. So hopefully we can get, the World Cup's going to be very difficult, but hopefully we can get through those first 2 games and then give France or the All Blacks a bit of a scare as well. Hope that'll be New Zealand, mate. They can beat France, but they can't beat New Zealand.
I respect that.
And Paul, do you get these kids, these younger kids coming to you with that frustration as to not being able to play as much rugby as they want? Do you kind of get kids that are sort of kind of almost chomping at the bit because they've not been able to play? Do you experience that?
I'd never say it to you. I don't think they're telling kids they're quite relaxed as well. They get to a situation they might get a bit agitated, but they'll never come to you and say, I'm really frustrated that I can't play more. They'd rather come to you and say, look, can you help me do this, rather than try to, whinge about it. So it doesn't happen. But when you do get the kids, like for example at the camps, I could have asked the kids to train 8 hours a day and they would have. They're so eager to do everything they can. Unfortunately the temperature didn't help us out. But the whole thing with my mindset on the scrum half stuff and just rugby in general is that you've got to have other interests as well. And I think a lot of kids, especially in New Zealand now as well, there's a lot of kids who just concentrate on rugby. I'm not sure how it is in the UK, but I'm sure it's very similar in some ways. So my whole thing here with the scrum halves is that we didn't have rugby in the mornings. We got up early, so mornings were up at 7, and we had a couple of breaks during the day, but we didn't finish till 12:30 in the afternoon. So it was a 5.5 hour session, just in micro blocks, but it was still long. And then the afternoons we concentrate on other things, in that time frame as well. During the lessons, the trainings, there was a lot of laughing and joking and taking the piss out of people and that kind of stuff, which I think helped them to relax a bit as well. So when you're relaxed, and we all know that as well, when you're relaxed, you can actually execute and absorb things a hell of a lot easier. So my whole philosophy on this is just trying to make these kids, give them as much opportunity as they can, but without suffocating them with too much.
And I guess the more we see the national side on the big stage playing rugby, that's enjoyable and exciting to watch, that can only motivate the young generation to play, can't it?
Exactly, mate. I mean, now you've got kids like 37 up there, and now there's I think there's about 31 of them want to be the next Stephen Varney, So that's pretty cool. Or the next Alessandro Garbisi, the next Alessandro Fusco. So they didn't want to be a Paul Griffen or Alessandro Troncoso. I don't know why. But
Didn't want to get through the work as well.
It's the hairstyles. It's the hairstyles. They don't.
They're about 12, 13, so I don't think they could grow sideburns anyway at the moment.
Did you? I think that's quite an interesting one, because you mentioned some of those names, Garbisi and Stephen Varney. Were you involved with any of those guys when you were with the federation?
Yeah, no, I was. I was involved with Alessandro Fusco basically from when he originally wasn't a scrum half. He only became a scrum half about 2.5 years ago. He was a 15. He's a bit of a utility. He didn't really know where he was going to play. And then
it's interesting you say that real quick. Just sorry to interrupt. Okay. This is something that we've said how many times, March, where we were saying he's like a 12, but he's a 10, but he's also like a 9 that can play fullback. He's just like this absolute freak. But yeah, no, it's that makes a lot more sense, right?
Yeah, no. Well, he was, because when I first met him, he was he 14 or whatever. And he was down in Benevento, which is down the south of Italy, and just in the line with Naples, and he was playing 15 come 13, and he just comes to the scrum half works. He wanted to increase his passing skills and his catching skills, and he just kind of took off. And then 3 years later, he was in the national under-20s, and he's gone through, and he's probably now he's probably the answer to Italy off the bench. I don't think he's a starter, because I don't think he's got the right mental, or not mental, but the right preparation to be a starter. But if he comes off the bench with 25 minutes, he attacks around the breakdowns. He's got a good pass. He's got good vision. He's very strong as well. So, he's one of those guys that can come on and, maybe create a bit of havoc at the end of the game. But, and obviously with Alessandro Garbisi, I had a lot of time with him as well. I had 2.5 years with him. He was in the Benetton, the Treviso Academy. So, I had a lot of time with him too. Obviously his brother was a big part of it too. I was involved with him for a couple of years with goal kicking and stuff like that. Obviously he's now with the Italian Rugby Union's kicking specialist, but there's a lot of kids that have come through now, especially the scrum half wise, who, you still get a call every now and again. If you're watching my games, can you tell me something, give me some feedback? So it's quite nice, just to be able to have that connection as well.
I think one thing that I've personally learned, I can't speak for much, but speaking to you guys, is how well connected the whole sort of Italian community is when it comes to rugby. And it's nice to hear that they keep you top of mind if there's a little bit of feedback or anything, if they want to, because they feel like it's a community, it's a community game, and that's that sort of community feel still to it, albeit obviously relatively secluded in different parts of Italy. I had a question, and I vaguely remember this from maybe an interview of old. But you originally went to Naples, right, to start off with. Can you tell me a little bit about why you would go to Naples of all places?
Long story short, basically, I was playing in Canterbury. I played a bit of pre-season in the development team for the Crusaders, and then we came back to the club season after that, and I bust my knee. So I was out for 8 months, and I came back, and basically same ground, same minute, basically same spot of the field, exactly the same thing again. So basically a season and a half out, and Wayne Smith was the coach at the time, and he said to me, "Look, the season's finished now. Once you get it back on the horse, head overseas." And he set up a couple of opportunities, one in San Francisco at Golden Gate, or one in Naples. Actually, it was through him and through another guy, but basically in Naples or in Benevento, which is down by Naples as well. And I didn't want to go to America. America didn't interest me at all. So, and I always wanted to go and see the Colosseum and Venice and eat pizza and pasta and mozzarella cheese. Yeah. And my mother said to me, "Please don't go to Naples." So what do? I went to Naples, mate. And yeah, no, I'll never forget it. I remember getting there. I got picked up by this guy. Myself and my wife, we'd just been married for 10 days. So we're kind of using it as a bit of a honeymoon getaway type thing. And got picked up by this guy at the Naples airport. And we got in the car on the wrong side of the car. So basically I got in the car and the steering wheel was there. I was like, "No, I'm not here. I've got to get on the other side." So we got on the other side. And we drove from the airport down to the rugby club rooms, and mate, I was sweating like a pig. It was absolutely horrible. It was horrifying. We're driving past families of 5 on a Vespa with their dog and a cat and the groceries. It was just eye opening, coming from the rigid kind of standard things in New Zealand to Naples, where basically anything went, was it was strange. And I'll never forget the one thing they told me, mate. They gave me a car the second day, which I didn't want to drive, but I had to. They said, "If you get to a green light, go. If you get to an orange light, go. If you get to a red light, go, but be careful." I was like, "Holy shit." Anyway, I was driving along, and the light went orange, and it went red. So I thought, "Oh, no, I'll stop. They must be taking the piss." I got rammed by a bus, mate. Rear-ended by a bus. So I never stopped again at a red light in Naples. And yeah, that's...
It's a lawless land. It's a lawless land.
Lesson learned. But it was a good time, mate, because I was down there, and obviously rugby at the time was still going well. I think Patrarca, the club that I played for, had won the championship about 20 years beforehand. So they were kind of trying to vie to get back up there. And we were lucky enough that we had a pretty good team that year. And I was lucky enough to be involved in that. And we got promoted to the next division. And I won't say like Maradona, but I could basically go anywhere and you got treated like royalty. It was absolutely brilliant.
They look after their own, don't they? Like in Naples. Were you down in Benevento then? Was that where you were playing?
No, I actually played it in Naples.
Oh, did you actually?
And then I had a couple of mates went across to Benevento as well. And so we had a couple of excursions back and forth between there on a couple of quiet beers every now and again.
Because it was like, from my understanding, Benevento used to be like quite a well-established club, and I assume sort of Naples was as well. And it seems, obviously, that Campania region seems like an absolute like gold mine of potential talent if we could attract them to rugby, because like high altitude, a lot of very heavy manual work. Is almost like the southwest of England, where like we joke about farmer strength, but it's sort of there. So like it's interesting that you found, for example, like Fullscore, who clearly has that wiry strength, and he comes from that, and it sort of proves he's like the exception that proves the rule a little bit. So hopefully the federation, I think they vouched 600,000 euros. I don't know how much went to actual south of Italy, but that's how much they vouched last year, and be interesting to see what they vouched this year and where it goes to. But like those are the regions where like it's an absolute no-brainer, isn't it, to try and sort of invest.
Oh, it is, mate, because there's so much natural talent down there as well. There's kids that play and they don't get seen because Campania and further even down, they just don't get considered because rugby is Veneto and Lombardia. That's basically it. You might get a bit of Florence as well, with Tuscany, but it's basically those two regions there which dominate it. So the rest of the country kind of gets forgotten about, especially in the development parts. I think that was the best thing as well when they had the 9 regional academies. There's one in Torino, there's one in Sicily as well. And some kids from Sicily, Sardinia, they came through the Italian system and they played Italian in the 20s as well. So, there is talent out there. It's just a matter of getting out there and finding it. But yeah, we'll see how things go in the future, mate. Hopefully the academies come back in and they can give those regions a decent chance too.
Just a quick one on that as well. So for those who are listening and don't understand what you meant by the academies and stuff, do you want to quickly try and explain that in a bit of detail, if that's all right? Just because I think there's a lot of even abroad, like I've seen Irish publications, I've seen Scottish publications, I've seen everyone, but I don't think there's someone who lives, breathes it, and knows Italian rugby like you do.
Basically, I think when the last president, who unfortunately passed away about a year ago, Alfredo Gavazzi, he took over becoming the Italian president. There was already one national academy, which was the under-20s academy, which is based in a place called Tirrenia, which is close to Pisa. And that was based there for about 7 years. And they shifted to Parma. And then he wanted to try and feed into that national academy with 9 different academies. So I can't remember them all, mate, but I think there's one in Turin, there was one in Treviso, there was one in Rimadello. Yeah. There was one in Prato, there was one in Rome, there was one in Sicily.
Milan as well.
There was one in Milan. There was one in Benevento, and there was another 2. I can't remember where they were. But it was really, really good. You know, they had basically there, I think every academy had 28 kids. So, you know, with 9 academies there, you had 230 odd kids, which was pretty bloody good. And from there, the selection of them, the older years, they were over 2 different age groups. So from the selection of the bigger kids, they were going to the best 28 or the best 32, actually, were going to the National Academy, and they'd build through. So you basically had a 3-year process to go through the Italian under 17s, 18s, up to the 20s. And that's kind of where these guys like Michele Lamaro now, you know, the Canoni brothers, Paolo Gabisi, you know, even Federico Ruzza, all those guys are coming.
Just to corroborate what you're saying, I think Giovanni Licata came from the Sicily one, didn't he? So like, there's talent down there, right?
There's lots of talent down there, mate. And there's a guy called Christian Lai, come from Sicily. Sicily, from Sardinia. So there's kids that have come from everywhere. And you know, the big thing is if you go to, for example, Catania now, or to Sicily, everyone remembers Giovanni Licata. He debuted for Italy against, I think it was Samoa, down in Catania in his home ground. Christian Lai played a test. And they didn't play test, so they played in the 20s, but they played a game over there in Sardinia as well. So, you know, all the kids in those regions remember these guys, that they made it from those small places. So, you know, there's a lot of kids just wanting to have a chance, but no, those 9 academies were basically there, and the whole process of going through, it worked really, really well, mate. There's some kids that went in there and they really pushed themselves, and they kind of figured out that it wasn't maybe for them, and they pulled away from it. There's some kids that didn't get selected for the Italian national system, national academy, sorry, and they got basically picked up by other clubs, you know, in the top division. So they had another pathway as well, but it gave a pathway to at least 50, 55 kids a year, which is really, really good, you know, especially for a country where, like I said before, rugby is not a major sport.
And there's one final point, I think. Like, obviously, now that the top 10 is starting to set up these under 19s and academies, do you think we're sort of lacking a little bit again, because geographically, the vast majority of the top 10 teams are secluded to a particular part, which, for those who don't know, is the northeast of Italy, and then obviously, you know, the vast contingent of players outside of that are predominantly based in Rome, and it feels like, you know, we're potentially missing out on a little bit of, you know, the talent between Rome and maybe the Lombardy area with like Milan and stuff as well. So thrown in, do you think this top 10 academy system is potentially like a step back in your eyes, or do you think it's something that could go very well if there's buy-in from the top 10 and the politics and stuff's resolved?
Initial thought, mate, it is a step back, I think, from the academy system there was, because it was the academy system there was, it worked, you know, and it's been proven. Now I think maybe, you know, pulling the academy, stopping the academies, looking at what's not being produced now, and then trying to reinvest in something which is not proven, I think it will be difficult, you know, if it is studied properly and all the platforms are laid down, the base is laid down, you know, it could work. But doing it at the level of a club, I think it'll be difficult, because it's probably like anywhere in the world, you know, clubs that are close together, a lot of them aren't friendly. So, you know, I'm not going to send you my best player. I'm not going to give you my best player because you might take him or you might do this. So, there's all that that playground, that schoolboy kind of attitude as well. That's you might take my best players. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is obviously a topic we could probably talk about for hours and hours and hours, pretty much. So we will move on to sort of the last part, which is maybe the more lighter, fun part, because we do have a few questions for you, Paul, which are probably you might have been asked before. Which are a couple of questions. Your favourite player to ever play with through your playing career?
To play with as a player or as a character?
I think your favourite player to play with as a character, I think we'll go with.
As a character, oh, shivers. Probably it had to be Castro. He's a dick. He's a dick. But no, he's a big cuddly bear, but he was an absolute gem of a person. I was lucky enough to meet him when he first came to Italy. He came to Calverson where I was playing, and he just started playing rugby, and then he kind of took off. And I always joke with him as well, and not with him, but with the friends of ours as well. So like this guy's got something special. He'll end up being one of the best props in the world. And he got, I think the second year as in at Leicester, he got crowned Premiership Player of the Season. Then he went on to play 100 tests, and he's an amazing person. He's on the field, you look at him and go, shit, I don't want to touch him, but off the field, he's so approachable and just such a good character. I don't know if it's lucky or unlucky. I'm unlucky to room with him a few times as well. So we'll just leave that there.
Yes, maybe best. And the most talented player you played with?
Talented, I think there was, mate, and I've said this to a lot of people. There was a young winger from Rome, a guy called Ludovico Nitalia. He was, I think, only played 11 tests, but he was something special, mate. He was unreal. He, for me, was the Christian Cullen of New Zealand rugby, of Italian rugby. He just had something really special about him, but he just kind of never really kicked on. He played, I think, 11 tests. He never scored a try, which wasn't his fault because we didn't score a lot of tries back in those days, even now. But he was like just a pure talent, mate. He was so fast, so reactive, so explosive, such a good guy. He came from a family, I think, of 6. All of the kids, their names were, he was Ludovica Maria d'Italia. Everyone had Maria as a middle name. So it was very religious as well. But I remember I took him one time too, because back in the day, I was involved with Puma. They looked after you with boots and gears and all the bits and shits. And I said to Ludo, look, I'll sort you out. And he goes, no, I don't need anything. So we took him there, and they said, look, we'll sign you up. You can come on and get your gears and that. He goes, no, I don't want to. So anyway, they gave him gears, and he didn't want them. So he just gave them away to anyone on the street. Just gave it away. It's just such that kind of a person. But he was the most talented player that I think that never got a chance to express himself on the international scene.
Very interesting. And I think the last one that I've just thought about right now on the spot, if you could be paired with any fly half in today's game, who would it be?
In today's game?
Yeah.
Richie Mo'unga, mate. Richie Mo'unga. Both play for the same club as well, so it'll be a Linwood Bulls connection back in Christchurch. No, Richie Mo'unga, I think he's outstanding. If you're going back in the day, then I would have said someone else, but no, Richie Mo'unga would be the person. Now, I just think he's, for the stature he's got, I think it'd probably be the only time I could actually say I'd be taller than a scrum half, than a fly half as well, because I've never been taller than a fly half. So, but he's just got something special about him. I think, for the small stature, he refuses to go on the wing to defend. He wants to put himself on the front line. With ball in hand, he's unreal vision, unreal footwork, and just his goal kicking has improved immensely as well. So he would be the one person that I'd be very, very happy to have run around beside.
Given that you just said that, what about in the past then? If you could play with any 10 from the past?
Oh, in the past, probably someone like Matt Gitto, I reckon. Matt Gitto was just someone, actually, I was lucky enough to play against him one time in Rome, and he actually played 9. So I've actually got his jersey here. We swapped jerseys. He played 9 when I don't know who the coach was convinced he wasn't a 10, he was a 9. So I was happy with that. But I think he was just someone that, again, that size thing as well. He attacked the line. He played 12. He played everywhere in the world he could, but he just had such good vision, just so strong, and such a generous player as well. He'd be greedy at some stage. Greedy is not the right word, but he'd attack the line, but just create so much space for everyone else as well. So he would be the ideal back in the day, mate, back when we were in our 30s.
Awesome. Well, Paul, listen, you've been an absolute pleasure to chat to, and I think, like I said, we could probably sit here and chat with you for ages. So thanks so much for sharing all your stories and everything you've been up to. It's been a pleasure to chat.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And to all the Italian supporters out there, keep following the Italian team because the tide is turning and we are coming. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, brilliant sentiment to end on. And like I said, anything we can do to help with any of the causes you're doing, Paul, we'd be absolutely, of course, happy to help. And you just let us know. And hopefully now we can officially add you to our friend of the pod. You can be a friend of the pod. Fingers crossed.
100%, mate. I'll sign up straight away.
Awesome stuff. Well, yeah, like I said, make sure you subscribe to this, whatever your chosen podcast platform is. Make sure you click subscribe and keep listening, and follow us on our socials, which is all on our link tree, which we post up with every podcast we do. So please be sure to follow us on all of those, share away, and keep listening. And we'll be back with more Italian rugby content on our next podcast. But from me and Mike and Paul, ciao ragazzi, ciao.